through his visual arts.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to um, share some thoughts and experiences. Yes, it was mentioned just now that I think one of the organizers saw the exhibition. Did you? You saw it in a newspaper. Basically, it's an exhibition to commemorate the formation of the country and also Merdeka, of course. And there was a reason why. It's a very old-fashioned kind of a show. The reason is because we have a new government. Not everybody voted for the same reasons. Um, and what this new government might try to bring, there will be oppositions to it. So the reason for the exhibition was basically something like this. The different races have lived together for 61 years. We're an old couple. With this change of political reality, it's probably also time to look back at our vows and renew it if possible. The apa? What did they mention about the yang keruh, yang jernih? The good one we retain, the not so good one we forget about it lah. So that was actually the reason. But the biggest impact for me as someone who works in the visual arts field, as a curator, not so much as a arts practitioner, was basically coming across a very important exhibition catalog called the First National Loan Exhibition. It's basically the first exhibition organized by the National Arts Gallery in 1958. Now, the National Art Gallery was established under its own act 1 year just after Merdeka. This is not Malaysia yet. This is Malaya. And a few lines from the forward in that catalog was very inspiring. I'd like to share these few lines with you. Yeah. Art expresses and reflects the spirit and personality of the peoples who make a nation, right? Malaya has many artists of whom she may be justly proud. But it's only in an art gallery that the public can see and enjoy their work. And unless the best works of our artists are purchased for the national collection, they can rarely be exhibited. I'm sure most of you have never been to the National Art Gallery. And most of you have never seen the national collection. I will show some of it today. Okay, just a few, not too many. But the following lines, it is more personal to me. The foundations of independence have been well laid. We have taken the initiative to actually remove ourselves from colonial yoke, and we want to, how should I say, chart our own destiny for the future, right? So that foundation has already been laid, thanks to the British, of course, so with all the basic, the rules and all that is there already. We can run the country smoothly somehow. And it is the responsibility of the present generations of Malayans to build on them a nation which will gain some of its inspiration from a fine collection of works of art, worthily housed and accessible to all. What it means is this: as we move towards the uncharted future, as Malayans, people who are made up of different races, different cultures, beliefs, political ideology, and so forth, we can seek some form of inspiration of where we wish we want to go from looking at a bunch of pictures done by Malayans such as you and I. So when I read this, I thought this is a very powerful simple but powerful. Probably not written by Tunku, as someone mentioned. These are all written by their speech writers or their political secretaries. But of course, Tunku was the patron, and he opened the exhibition. So Tunku, of course, is our father of independence. When we talk about the visual arts, we're talking about something that is less than 100 years old. When we compare to Indonesia, to the Philippines, and even to Thailand, they have established art academies at least 100 years before Malaya and Malaysia, right? Our oldest art academy or art school was basically founded in 1966-67. Malaysian Institute of Art, a private college, Kuala Lumpur College of Art, which has already closed down, and also ITM. So this is quite recent. And our own history about the development of Malaysian art before the British or after the British, this is still very sketchy. We don't have enough information about it, right? So, but when we're talking about art, we're talking about something that is quite new, quite recent. That doesn't mean we don't have an artistic culture or tradition or heritage. We have all of that, right? We have in the wood carvings of the Mahmeri and the Jahud, right? Very specific ideas about their place in the world, the function of these works, and so forth. Okay? We have, of course, the Bidayu. When we included Sabah, Sarawak, we've inherited also their artistic traditions, their cultural artistic traditions, the Sabah, the Sarawakians. This is Sabahan, right? All these are very specific forms, and they have very specific meanings, of course. And of course, we have the local Malay as well. So now, we're not talking about art yet. We're still talking about arts and crafts. We're talking about crafts. If you look at traditional forms of art, they were non-naturalistic, highly stylized, decorative, and usually have religious or utilitarian purposes. But when the British came, they introduced something quite interesting. All of us have been to art classes, right? Usually your teachers, I don't know about last time, but most of the people that I've asked, they say that usually the teachers will give them pieces of paper and they'll be asked to draw whatever they want to draw or what they like. Most of us will draw kampung houses. Kampung houses, trees lah, or whatever, right? Mountains lah, hills at the back. We don't have mountains, hills at the back and all that, right? So all of these things, basically, they are non-cultural. It's automatic, it's part of us, right? Which, of course, according to some writings, this realistic approach to showing reality and this personal expression of how this reality would take shape is something that is very alien to us, because in our culture, there is usually not much room for self-expression. If you were to do batik, you were to do weaving, for example, songket, there's no sad songket, there's no melancholic angpao, there's no overly happy tanglong, right? And there's no dark batik, all these kind of things. We don't have that. We don't have individualistic self-expression, not so much lah in our cultures. But with the introduction of this Western modes of perception, right? The comprehension, apprehension of reality that was different from the local and the indigenous, founded on scientific and empirical considerations. Now, this is actually very interesting because when you do drawing, you have to learn how to do perspective, and also you have to do counting in terms of the distance between an object and your field of perception, and also you learn how to do a bit of shading to capture the 3D form or the chiaroscuro. Now, all of this we do not have in our own cultures, our artistic heritage. Chinese brush painting never developed into something that's realistic. It was there to capture energy. If you look at all the crafts, they all have very specific functions, usually religious, spiritual, and you can use these crafts. You can't take a painting, put on the table and put food on it, clean it and put it back on the wall. But you can do it with a with a bowl, china, for example, with a ceramic or tempayan or whatever, and you can still use it as a form of decoration. So That's the part about cultural diversity. We have that, right? So then we, of course, yes, we receive all these influences when we were under the control of the British. And from there, we develop our own forms of expression, right? Which, of course, includes these three. Naturalism, which is realism. Like that's the usual that everybody would know and call art, you know. Oh, this looks very real, huh? This looks like photograph, huh? You're very skillful, you know. This is basically how we judge art. It's very real, very realistic. And then, of course, expressiveness. Oh, this is basically how I feel about my cat, my dog, the weather, and all that. We include something very personal inside it. And if you look at abstract art, which is currently happening now at the Maybank Gallery, they have this exhibition called abstract art, called pure painting. Basically, when people walk in, a lot of Maybankers, what they do is they come out after makan, they have free time before they go out, they just walk into the entrance, they look, and then they walk out. Because when they look at abstract painting, they don't see anything. So basically, it's too individualistic, it's too personal. You know, it cannot connect with some of them. But this is what we discovered, that as artists, we can do something that is useless. In fact, Oscar Wilde said, art is the most useless thing in the world because it's the most personal thing, right? And self-expression, these are also very new ideas, new concepts, even in the West. We have what do you call that, the visual arts, the culture and all that. We have that for thousands and thousands of years, but it was only maybe about 200 to 300 years that we've learned how to express ourselves through art, right? So now, here's an example of naturalism. Before we go into that, in Malaysian art, there are three main groups which have influenced the development of our artistic direction, even until now. And these three groups are the Malay-speaking, the Chinese-speaking, and the English-speaking. Right? The Malay-speaking basically is mostly the Angkatan Pelukis Se-Malaysia. This is a portrait, self-portrait by Muhammad Hussain Enas. He actually came from Indonesia. He founded the Angkatan Pelukis Se-Malaysia, originally called Semenanjung. Now, very interestingly, just now, Dr. Keith showed the Central Market building. I think it's safe to assume that most of us remember that at Central Market, there used to be a lot of artists who basically took commissions from clients from us. You know, we have photos of our friends and we say, hey, can you do a pastel drawing of this? I want to give to my friend as a gift. Or for those who are a bit more ambitious, hey, this is a photo of this Tan Sri. Can you do a painting? I want to give to the Tan Sri during the officiating ceremony. So most of the artists, so-called artists, in Central Market at that time were self-taught. They did not have any academic qualification. And a lot of them basically credited the Angkatan Pelukis Semenanjung as the place where they got free art classes, they got tips and all that. They were basically the people who started live street drawing, yeah, and they painted all sorts of people, right? And even though the Angkatan Pelukis Semenanjung was Malay speaking, the classes was open to all races. There was no boundary saying, oh, this is only for Malays only. No, it was basically, come, you know, you like to draw, you want to learn how to draw, come, let's get together, right? And this is expressiveness. This is an expressionist painting by Syed Ahmad Jamal. Syed Ahmad Jamal is our National Art Laureate. His sculpture, the what Bulan, I can't remember what it called, was destroyed recently by DBKL. Yeah, I guess it was in the way of the River of Life project lah. Yeah, so what can be done, right? And then a bunch of artists came out and protested, and then you know, they wanted to, that was it lah. That was it. They just protested, and that was it. Now, if you compare this, right? This is realistic. Now, this is expressive because the use of colors and the forms are all very personal already. This is my own interpretation of how I look at the people who are bathing by the seaside. Yeah, this was done in 1957. Now, finally, individualism. This is by Abdul Latif Mohideen. He is, of course, our most famous modern artist who recently had a show at the Center of Modern Art, Pompidou in Paris, I think. Yeah, and now currently the exhibition is on at the Ilham Gallery. If you ask, if I ask any one of you, you probably can't make out what this is, right? It's too individualistic. But according to some writings about Latif Mohideen, it's basically images of the pagodas in Southeast Asia, because he undertook a journey in the 60s at a time when there was a need to look for some sort of identity. So what is Malayan or Malaysian or Malay or Southeast Asian identity? So he traveled around Southeast Asia and he saw all these structures and he reimagined or expressed his feelings about this or his views about this in his own style, which is what we call the abstract style. Right? So you have three very different, very strong but very different approaches in Malaysian art in the beginning. And of course, you have the Nanyang Academy Fine Art Artists in Singapore. Singapore at that time, of course, everyone assumed was part of Malaya, and a lot of our Malayan artists, especially the Chinese speakers, they would seek to study there. They would get their diplomas or degrees. Either they further to Pagi, right, or they would come back. And most of these teachers who graduated from this NAFA, they went to teach in private Chinese schools. So you have a different groups of people contributing in different ways, right? In different ways towards the Malaysian art scene. Now, what you will notice is the subject matter. No matter what the style, the subject matter is always about the local people, the places. Right, this is by Chong Soo Piang. Chong Soo Piang is one of the important artists from NAFA. He's also, I think, a national treasure to the Singaporeans. Well, if Singapore didn't leave, he would also be our national treasure. But yeah, this is how the NAFA artists depicted life in Malaya at that time, or tropical life. Okay, now let's look at some different styles. Mazli Matsom, who is the prodigy of the Hossein Enas from Angkatan Pelukis Malaysia. The way he depicts the local is very much in keeping with the lemah lembut and all that of the Malays, right? If you look at Georgette Cheng from NAFA, we consider her as a Nanyang artist, right? The Malay lady is much more freer. And then if you look at Syed Ahmad Jamal, can you make up what he drew? The title is Payung Biru. There's a lady sitting down and she's holding a blue umbrella at the back. So you have very different views of how we see ourselves. Yeah, even though all of these techniques and styles were learned or acquired, under the British rule or whatnot, but we're all Malayans or Malaysians at that time, but we see ourselves differently, yes, but we still saw ourselves as who we are, Malayans, right? And what about the landscape? Now the landscape, this is Chen Chong Sui. He's also one of the artists from Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts or NAFA. This is traditional Chinese brush painting, but he is painting a scene that you can't see in China. You know, in China there will be all these huge mountains, right? Tall, big mountains. Of course, in Malaysia we don't have lah. The tallest is Banjaran Titiwangsa lah, right? In Semenanjung, right? And then of course you won't find coconut trees in Chinese brush painting, right? And also kampung, rumah kampung, right? Okay, now the next is Abdullah Arif, a very important pioneer in watercolor, and it's basically the watercolor painting of a tin mine titled The Good Earth. And finally, you have Teh Hui Kiat, Datuk Teh Hui Kiat. Can you guess what is this image showing? One more? Banana tree, coconut tree, what else? What else? House, kampung house. Yeah, okay, yes, it is. Yeah, all three, you can get all three. You can take the Malaysian out of the kampung, but you can't take the kampung out of the Malaysian. Yeah, so no matter where you go, no matter what we've acquired, we came back and we're producing what is basically our reality, our people and our landscapes. Now, this is not enough. You can learn techniques, right? And you can paint the people in whatever form. But this is still not Malayan enough. And there were efforts by our early artists trying to really emphasize on the local aspect. So, and this guy appeared in the scene. His name is Chua Tian Ting from Penang. He's born in China, like most Chinese. Right? He came to Penang, and then what he did was he started painting on batik. Now, the batik has been around for so long, right? But batik has very specific motifs, functions, its decorative considerations and structures and uses even, yeah. But this uncle basically started drawing on batik, but not any drawing or not any images. It's images of the local people, right? And in fact, he was acknowledged as a pioneer. He was given accolades. He got a scholarship to travel, a grant or scholarship to travel around Europe. He was given a dato-ship, a DATO, and then later a DATUK. That's the difference there, right? And he celebrates Malaysian life, and he sees a lot of potential and harmony. The paintings are mostly mother and child, and the moms are basically really, very ample, right? And the kids look very contented. It basically talks about shows what the country is like actually. Malaysia, we are very lucky. I mean, the first speaker mentioned many of the things which, if he were to come up with a book or an essay, a lot of the things that he mentioned can be complemented with a lot of the images done by our artists. There was a very strong sense of appreciation. Even most of the non-Malay artists couldn't speak Malay properly, right? But there was this idea that Malaysia is very rich. It's such a nice place, I mean, and it's a land of abundance, lah. That's why the women you can see, they are really ample, and then there's always enough for everyone. But that's the thing. How do you look for a Malaysian identity? So in the case of Chua Tian Ting, he found it in batik. So he took batik and he started applying a more modern depiction of the local people. So for this he was rewarded lah, and appreciated, right? But then we move on to nationhood, nation building. When the country achieved independence, and later, of course, we formed Malaysia, right, with Sabah Sarawak and also Singapore. And with the new parliament building, he was asked also to come up with a design for the walls. I don't know which part of the walls, right? But he was supposed to come up with two design, and but in the end, the government didn't follow through with the idea. But if you look at this mural, right, this design for murals, if you look at this mural that was done by Chua Tian Ting, you can see that he included all the different races cari makan together, right? You can see all the different industries, and you can even see the landmark. I think one of the landmark is Singapore, but now it's okay. But if you look at all the way to the top, you can see at the time, I think that's rubber tapping, yeah. This was done in the 60s. And this is the cultural part. First you have the cari makan bersama-sama, then you have the cultural part, hidup bersama, which is what my exhibition at Maybank was about. You can see all the different races. Yeah. At that time, he actually included Sabah and Sarawak, the Sabah and Sarawakian natives. I remember for the longest time, we never thought about who the Sabahans and the Sarawakians were, because they never appear on TV, you know, until recently, until last 10 years ago, when the government realized, yeah, we've been taking oil from the Sabahans and the Sarawakians, using it to pump and develop KL especially, and all that, and this is our fixed deposit. We better show some respect to them. We start showing their newscasters on air, you know, talking about Sabah Sarawakian issues and all that, blah blah blah. But if you notice that even this is the IBAN probably, right? Everyone is included in this this image. Even the orang asli happens to be on top. You notice that? But of course, to emphasize that, of course, this is no matter what. This is led by the Malay government, right? You have the Malay gentleman there playing kite, right? The kite is above the orang asli. It's such a nice, gentle way of stating a fact, right? But at that time, not many people were thinking about that. So you have that, and of course, lastly, not yet lastly. In the 1960s, there's another painting. This is rarely seen by Long Tian Sheh. He happens to be our father of print. He was, I think, the first to get a scholarship to study at in France on printmaking. And this painting basically shows what he saw at that time in the 1960s. There were basically a lot of people engaged in cultural activities there's silat there are people dancing even ronggeng and all that. Of course, there's mahjong right? There's cockfight you know. That's how he saw the country, and that was the reality of the country at that time. There was just people doing their things together and then having fun. Of course, later, in the end, we have May 13. Right, May 13. There are 3 versions, of course, the 3 printed versions. First by Tunku, second, of course, by Leon Comber, who is a journalist, and the latest one not too long ago by Dr. Kwa Kia Sung. Each of them have their own theories and so forth. But there are many stories about May 13 that is actually very touching. It's really about people. Yeah, but even our artists responded to it. The artists, they have such high hopes for the country. They thought that everyone was together. Suddenly you have the May 13 thing happen, and then we have a few artists, in fact 4 or 5 of them, who basically responded. It's actually illegal to do that because it was considered off limits already. No more discussion about it. So we have Ibrahim Hussain, who is also one of our very important and famous abstract painter, where he painted the Malaysian flag black. You can see the Malaysian flag is painted black, and there's one big circle in the center. He was basically asked to, I think there were calls for him to be jailed, and he was asked to go to Parliament to defend himself. So he mentioned that, you know, the old Malaysia is gone, so now, you know, we have to start anew, and we hope things will be better. And of course, you have Reza Piadasa, a very important art historian and academician. He painted the Malaysian flag around this coffin. Original work was destroyed, of course. It's illegal, right? So this one is now belongs to Singapore Museum, I think. Yeah, but this basically, it shows that the artists, all of the artists, regardless of what is their ethnicity, they are English speaking, Malay speaking, Chinese speaking, or whatnot. Regardless of their religious beliefs, they have very positive view about the country, and they presented the country in a very positive way. There, you know, and basically there was no promotion of ill will through the arts, through the visual arts. Of course, after the May 13 incident, the government tried to, in a way, control the production of art. You know, must be in line with what we are aspiring post May 13 and all that. And of course, you have the KKK, right? This is the Malaysian version, Okay. In fact, these two very important artists, Syed Ahmad Jamal and Reza Piadasa, they were members of the faculty. They were involved with helping to organize the KKK cultural policy. I just read recently, Dr. Kwok Kiasong wrote about what is the use for the cultural policy now with the new government and all that. The truth is, we never really enforce cultural policy. The government, we are among the freest. There was no real force by the government to say, hey, when you represent a country, you must wear songkok, pakai sarong and all that. No. And when I asked some of my friends, hey, would you wear sarong? Would you pakai songkok? They say, no lah, I won't. Because I'm not Malay, I'm not Muslim. But then I said, hey, but if the Agong wants to give you a datukship, would you wear it? He said, of course lah. You see the double standard, right? But yeah, there were basically discussions and they wanted to formulate some sort of a cultural policy. Indonesia has it, Philippines has it, and Thailand has it. I think other countries in Southeast Asia have it except for, I think, Malaysia and Singapore. Again, we are quite free, you know. You can wear cheongsam or whatnot, you can wear sari or whatnot, you can still represent the country. There's no basically any restrictions. So in that discussion, many of the panels felt that it's time to formulate a policy, something more in line with our aspirations, something more Malaysia, post May 13 and whatnot. And the two of these gentlemen here, they said that you can't streamline it, you can't impose, because our artistic practices in Malaysia were rooted in pluralistic circumstances. The different races developed, but they were all painting Malaysians in their own way, right? And of course, the other panels felt that, we have to make art, right, accessible conceptually and formally to everyone else. Just like what I've done, I show you the abstract paintings and all that. Many of you probably don't get it, right? So those people who probably didn't get it, they felt that, okay, I think we need to put aside all the abstract art lah. You need to do something more accessible so that other people can understand. We're trying to build a country here, no more shock sendiri and all that stuff, right? So you need to do what Engku Aziz say, art for society, not art for art's sake, right? He stated that, Engku Aziz is a very important figure in Malaysian art, because he was also very encouraging and he also supported a lot of artists, Malayan artists at that time. But he felt that artists should do something for the society. So usually we ask, what can artists do for society? Besides painting school murals showing KLCC, the monorail train, Proton Saga, Bunga Raya, Twin Tower, KL Tower and all that. And the 3, 4, 5 races all like very happy together, right? So the artists saw that, you can't force us to fake it lah, We are individuals, right? So you can't force us. And then they debated the issue and people took a vote, right? And many felt that, okay, I vote that artists should do something for society. We should encourage art for society's sake and not art for art's sake, which is shock sendiri. And the discussion was over. The artists basically stood up and left as a protest. That's the end of the slides here.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for insightful opinions. I will now like to open the floor for any questions. We have 10 minutes for Q&A, so to help us keep with time, we request that questions are kept short and to the point. Please use the microphones provided when speaking and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Just a quick question with regards to your opinion on advertising and its effect on public art in Malaysia, because especially in KL, most of the visual imagery we see from the street is all advertising. There's almost no art. What's your opinion on that?
If you notice also, that's interesting. If you notice, a lot of the public sculptures in KL after, I think, the 1980s, A lot of them are basically without imagination. Do you remember the famous picture plant? I don't know whether it is still there. All of these are done by contractors. They're all done by contractors and they are not done by artists. If you look at the Museum Negara mural, you look at the Dewan Bahasa Pustaka, a few murals in the universities, those are mostly done by the artists. Now, this is public space is big money. Artists basically ask for money, they don't give money. If you want me to do something, you want to commission me, so they'll ask for money. So if you're in an advertising or you pay DBKL to secure a space to be able to advertise. So you can see a lot of our artists are losing out. But if the advertisement, yes, an ad is basically there to highlight the product or service, to sell something. But if it comes with a positive message, why not? Because the visual arts have moved on. Is now you have the digital media approach, you have performance art and so forth. So all these have moved on, and it's not really like just now someone mentioned about the Yasmin Ahmad's ads and all that. You know, it's still Petronas. It's still a branding exercise for them actually. But those things that they highlight, those are the things that actually really represent true Malaysians. You know, in May 13, for example, you have the story of the usual story, the Malay killing the Chinese killing the Malay, blah, blah, blah. But there are also Malays who are helping the Chinese to escape from the mob. You have the Chinese helping the Malays to escape from the Chinese mob. And one of my BM teacher, his name is Abdul Rahman, he told me that he was teaching part-time in UM, and his students basically saved him, kept him in their house, because in KL, there was a Chinese mob looking for Malays to slaughter. So, you know, it's the message of the ad. Yeah, that is my opinion.
Oh, okay. Is there any more questions? Oh, okay. Final questions from the lady.
Hi, I'm Sherry Blankenship. I have been to the National Art Gallery. And I do like art, and I guess I want to defend artists. In the beginning of your talk, you talked about a number of things as being functional, you know, fabrics and so forth, pots. Do you not make a distinction between art and crafts, or art that's functional and art that's not functional?
I think, as I mentioned, if you're talking about craft, it's a reproduction of something that already existed, something that you've inherited, and it has very specific functions and meaning. There is no wide room for self-expression. You're not going to have a sad rug. You're not going to have what did I mention, a happy basket, right? All that complex feelings in an individual is, you can't find an expression through the art of craft, but it is through the art, and this is also a very new development. I'm sure you know, beginning with the Romantics, yeah, in Europe, and basically extended to all around the world. That is basically where we, as artists, could just express whatever we believe. That is why you find the artists, a lot of the artists who are in history, they are rebels, they are iconoclasts. They are all these strange and weird people who just basically make weird things, with feces, with blood. They cut themselves or whatnot. Very disturbing, because it's actually breaking out from tradition and all that. But again, in this context, as Malaysian artists, we do not do that, not so much. We try to reconcile our tradition, our culture, with modern forms of expression, without being too one-sided, too Malay, too Chinese, too Indian. We try to combine it, and this is the strategy that we are still using. We're still using that strategy. If you look at a lot of the young artists, they are trying to combine elements which are local and also the latest from abroad.
Okay, last question from the floor, right?
I'm Maria from St. John's, Kuala Lumpur. Can you give me a few comments on, I think it could be one or two foreign artists who goes around in Penang or maybe in Ipoh who paints on murals, which are very impressive and also attracts tourists. What I would like to know is how do you see them doing some of the characters and forms that are very typical of us Malaysians?
You're talking about the, I think it's a Peruvian or South American graffiti artist. We have graffiti art. If you've been around KL, you see the river, Klang River. Right? You see the side of it. We have talents, but you know, when a foreign artist comes to Malaysia and does something that pulls our heartstring or touches us, you know, we are like, wow, you know, finally people see us. You know what I'm saying? But in Malaysia, we don't have restrictions, not so much. If you, for example, I was told that if you try to go overseas, there'll be certain restrictions placed on your creativity or your platform to express yourself. But in Malaysia, we're quite open. Generally, we're quite open. A lot of artists will come and then they will basically allowed to do their own thing. I would say if these artists get such reception, perhaps we should open up more and you know, that could be a form of a challenge and also as inspiration for our local artists to do better. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Okay, if there's any further question, you could approach the speaker during lunchtime. Thank you, Mr. Tan, and the floor.